All right, so apparently I'm live now, and it's been a long time since I've done a live stream. I've been kind of focused on other things, but I'm here now, and let me see if this video starts making. Here's what we're going to talk about. Hydrasynth has some interesting um, synthesis techniques that I've kind of discovered in the past few weeks, and things that I've played around with, but this past week I kind of had a fire lit under me to explore them a little bit deeper, and I wanted to showcase some of the things that are not really on the box, like not a feature that is listed, but something that you can do, and it's pretty cool. So let's start by getting my little setup going here. So hopefully this works. Okay. Um, so I'm going to use the Explorer here. This stuff works on all versions of the Hydrasynth, but this fits nicely on camera and it's easy to use, so why not, right? The first thing that I want to cover is comb filtering. Um, Hydrasynth has 18 different filters in it for main filter types, but you don't really see a comb filter on there. And there's some effects filters in there, and there's flanger and that sort of thing, but there isn't a actual comb filter, right? Well, I discovered a way to create comb filtering effects in the Hydrasynth, and as a result, you can do physical modeling. So I thought I would showcase that. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to start with a saw wave. This is just an initialized patch, and just to give you guys a level test here. If you're in the chat, you can comment and let me know how the audio mix is, because again, this is a live stream, so I can't really monitor my own audio. But so again, initialize patch saw wave, and the trick is we're going to go into our mutant, and I'm actually going to go to mutant 2, not mutant 1, and I'll explain why that is later on. So I'm going to go ahead and select phase diff. All right. Now, phase diff is going to invert the phase of the waveform and basically put it against itself. So a saw wave will become a square wave. And you can get pulse width modulation in this way, which is pretty cool. And if you have other wave shapes, like if let's just grab a random wave shape here and I do the same thing, you can see how you're kind of pushing the waveform on itself in this way. Um, but going back to the saw wave here for a second, just because it's going to be very easy to understand, we want to create a comb filter by using the phase diff. And the way that that works is essentially when you use feedback, anything above 100% acts the same as a Q control on a comb filter. So let's go ahead, bring this here, and then as I bring up the feedback, switch this view here. Now you're going to see here that I can actually So if you're familiar with things like Rob Poppins BIT that has a comb filter in it, maybe Vital, there's a bunch of plugins that have nice comb filters in them. You'll notice that it's pretty similar to that. So how can we use that for physical modeling? One thing that I like to do is in physical modeling, you might be injecting some noise to help strike things, that sort of thing. I'll use mutant 1 to inject the noise into the phase diff to create that comb filter with a noise source, so that you're getting more than one sound source into there. You can do this a bunch of different ways with the mutants. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use the PWASM mode. The reason why I like using that is because it's very easy to make noise out of this by just being sloppy with it, right? So I'm going to turn the dry wet to about 60 actually. Yeah, 60%. That way I'm still getting my original waveform through, but I'm going to get this manipulated waveform as well. Now right now it's not going to change that at all. If I take the phase diff down, and you hear this, it's just a regular saw wave, right? But if I want to go ahead and really freak it out, what we would do is we go into the custom edit area, and then in this screen here, we have all these warp points, right? So as I bring these up, you're literally segmenting the waveform, and then you're FMing each segment at an individual amount, right? So I'm gonna, and I did a really in-depth video on this mutant and how it works. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of making it as jagged as possible, because I just want as many harmonics in here as I can get. And then I'm going to go back to depth. And then I'm going to bring the ratio up. So there you go. So that's noise basically, right? We get aliasing noise, whatever. Like, we want it to be as ugly as possible. And then we have this dry wet mix to inject that as much as we want. So let's make this a physical modeled sound. We're going to go for like kind of a belly metallic plucky type sound. So I'm going to, of course, drop my sustain down. Let's get some decay going on here and some release. Maybe about 800 milliseconds, and the release is going to be like 240 somewhere. I'm kind of just guessing at this point. And then I'm going to affect my curve a little bit here and bring both the release and decay a little bit more exponential. I'm in the mid 40s. So this is what we're starting with. Okay. And we want to make this thing super plucky. So envelope 3, I'm going to drop down. I'll make that super short, 160 milliseconds, and release is going to be like 130. Again, I'm going to give it a little bit more exponential curve here. And then I'm going to tie, envelope 3 is going to get tied to mutant 1, dry wet, right? So that's going to be that noise. So this is kind of, there it is. And again, let me know how the sound is if you're having any issues with that. I'm more than happy to alter the sound levels in here because I can't monitor them. So we've got this little like metallic noise pluck going on, right? We want to use the comb filter to be kind of that reverberant body, all right? So in the phase diff, so now we're at dry wet 100%. And as we adjust the depth, that's how you're going to get this kind of tuning action. So I'm going to start at 128, and I'm actually going to work backwards on it, okay? And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie that to envelope 2, which is our amp envelope. So envelope 2, and then I would just press depth, and I have that modded there, and I'm going to listen to it. So I know that about 98 or so, I'm getting a pretty good range there, and I'm going to bring that back to 0, and I'm actually going to map this to a macro. So this is source 2, and that's going to be a macro. So macro 1 is going to be mod matrix 2, and we'll drop that down to about 98, right? That's about my max here. Yeah, in that range, right? So now, I have control over this, okay? And we'll name it, bend, because it's easy and I know the words there. Right? Macro 2, let's go ahead and do that now. That's going to actually be our oscillator waveform, right? And you could do this a whole lot of different ways. I'm going to kind of randomly select a value here and then just kind of listen to it. So this is basically going to be the material that we're stimulating. So if you want to get string sounds, if you want to get, you know, something a little bit more plucky or hard or whatever, like, you know, adjusting that waveform is going to kind of do that. Just in the in the interest of moving along quickly, this is going to be Yang Bing. And so now we have this here, and we can kind of adjust our feedback a little bit. So if we drop that back, it kind of falls out. All right, and I'm going to drop the oscillator pitch a little bit here as well, just to give it more to chew on. All right, now this is where we get into the kind of fun stuff of making it actually sound like something physically modeled. So what we want to do, I like to kind of play with the dry wet levels to see where my ranges are going to be on my macros. So I can actually drop down to about 80% here, and then go up to 100 and get like just kind of slight variation, which is going to come really into a nice context as I add things like a almost like a Karplus strong delay. So when you combine this comb filter effect with a delay, we're going to use the left, right, center delay here at about 4.5 milliseconds. Decent feedback here. And as I modulate this a bit, so I'd really say like 9 milliseconds would be the max there. And going up to 1. So we'll start at 9. Okay, in that range. So now that same envelope 2 to dry wet. We're going to go ahead and do that. And then envelope 3 is going to go to feedback. So now we've got this body. It's kind of uncontrolled, but we have this body of this physically modeled sound. And the longer we give a decay of, we kind of hear it reverberate in this kind of weird metallic way, which is fun. Giving that some reverb. You can kind of get into some cool range. And we'll get to the reverb later. Now, the ring mod becomes important at this point because we're going to use that to kind of simulate some extra harmonics in here. So in the ring mod, I'm going to select my source. Source 1 would be mutant 2. And source 2, we can do oscillator 2. And we can kind of pitch that up. So let's go ahead and... I like to use the harmonic waveforms for this kind of stuff. So like we'll do like 5. Let's change the voice to a mono voice as well, just to make it a little bit more controllable. And our filter is going to be important here as well. So the filter, we're going to take down a bit. Actually give ourselves more headroom here. We're going to drop down to about 80. Yeah. And ring mod. Now, let's give that filter some envelope. Drop the sustain down. Give it some decay. more plucky. Actually, we'll keep it long, but give it a really exponential curve. So like 60, right? And bring that in. So now you're kind of combining this yeah. So the clipping on the louder notes, again, that gets back to the headroom that I was talking about. When we're doing this, we want to really kind of tailor it back, because keep in mind you're going to be getting not only the level from the oscillator, but then you're also doubling up level from mutant 1 and mutant 2. So you're going to get a lot of harmonics here. That's going to be a just a massive amount of harmonics that are going to be poking through. So I tend to drop it down somewhere between 80, sometimes even as low as 60, and it's going to give you a lot more headroom on this stuff, and you're really not going to lose much level. But you do want to watch that really carefully. Okay, so now we have this going on. And the more delay that you use on this sort of thing, like if I bring this up, you'll hear like it can get really, you got to be careful with it. You see? So you want to be careful with the level that you're hitting that delay at from all of those harmonics. So which hopefully the amount that's going to the YouTube feed isn't way higher than what it should be. Like there's no real way for me to set it properly on here, but whatever. So where were we at? Okay. We've got this, plucking this, phase diff here, and we want to do a little bit more control on this thing. Yeah, let's give this thing some mallet control, that sort of thing. So that filter, bring this back up, I'm going to drop this a bit. So that envelope 3 feedback is going to come down. So that's source 4. And the dry wet was source 3. Down about here. So 3 and 4, macro, edit, 3, here, and 4. These are all going to be on, these two are both going to be on one macro. Good. And I think what I'll also do is add a little bit of envelope decay to that same macro. Yep. Okay, so we'll do this as like, really it should be body, but for now I'm just going to call it bacon just so that I have it here. Interest of time and all that good stuff. So the harmonic, let's grab that real quick. Let's grab that. That's going to be, put that on its own envelope. It's going to be a nice long decaying envelope. And we will tie that to the mixer. Ring volume, so that's source 5. Macro 5. Bring that up. Now that one you can get a little bit aggressive with, even though I'm bringing that all the way to full level, because it's really just spiking it once and then it's fading off. It shouldn't be that bad. If I have to tailor it down a little bit, I will. And again, once I'm done naming it, I need to turn that down in the mixer. Mixer, take the ring mod back down. There she is. And then all we have to do is that filter for that pluck, right? This is kind of important to get just kind of like the right. this is the kind of thing where oftentimes I'll macro these controls right here. Um, and the how many macros? There's 8 macros, and I'm setting up a macro for each parameter, which I'm kind of explaining as I go. So if you kind of have missed any of it, you can go back and check it out, and also I'll go back over them by the time I'm done. But the filter envelopes, oftentimes I want to have those macroed as well, because you want to have control over that kind of stuff. Like, especially if you're doing something where you've got like an ARP going or something in a mix. Sometimes you want it to ring out a bit, sometimes you want it to be shorter. This is going to be kind of the difference between something being kind of like a dead hit and something being like you hit it and just kind of let it ring out. That's basically what the filter is doing for us. It's kind of like a dampening effect, right? So let's go back to that filter. And so we have control of the cutoff. Take it way down. And we'll use a macro to bring it up, right? And then we'll also have control over the envelope amount. Because as we control that, it's like how hard you're hitting that. Right? So like there's kind of like a dead rubbery hit. Whereas here, a little bit more aggressive. Yeah. You may want to have that on 2 separate macros. You may want to put it all on one. I'm going to put it all on one for now, at least. So you hit macro edit, and then I'm going to hit page down. And now I'm in macros 5 through 8. Macro edit here. So we're going to go filter cutoff is going to come up a bit. Oftentimes, I'll set a button value for this sort of thing, which will just give me, like, you hit the button and you instantly go to kind of like a preset, you know? So, like, I feel like that right there is about as open as I want it to be, but I really kind of like it about halfway. So the button value is actually going to be like maybe 24, somewhere around there. So now when I press this button, it's right there. And if I take that off, I can go higher. So now let's go ahead and also assign some filter envelope amount. Here. So we'll give it just a bit. And then here we'll give it a bit. So. So that's pretty good. So what do we call that? For now, I'm just going to call it bite. It'll give me an idea. So now I have this really dead sound, but if I press a button, right? You might want to have a tuning knob for your comb filter here. So macro. We'll assign 6 to mutant 2. That's going to be our depth. And we'll just take it down a little bit. So it's kind of like a detune on it. Now you could go extreme here. So then you're getting into kind of like mutable instruments elements. Makes very similar sounds to this. So yeah, we'll do that, and we'll give it a detune of like, I think it was like 10. That sounded kind of cool. So I can button push it. And So, and of course, always just use your ears and tailor this stuff to um, you know, how it sounds, not just what you think, you know. Um, and we'll call that, and we'll call detune. I'm just abbreviating to be quick. Fall asleep on me. I'll know what it is, right? I'll know what it is. Good stuff, right? Another nice thing to do is if you use a comb filter in a plugin, usually you're going to have the ability to do things like key track your comb filter if you want to. So in that instance, what I'm going to do is just LFO5 to mutant 2, and now I've mapped LFO5 to the mutant 2. I'm going to do this to depth, but then I'm going to change it instead of LFO5. That's going to be key track. And again, remember, we're starting with the phase diff mutant is actually starting 100% open, right, at 128. So you want your key tracking to actually go negative in order for it to key track up. Now, this is something that you're going to do by ear when you set that modulation amount, because there's no like, because it just inherently the type of sound that you're making, it's not really something that's going to key track perfectly. You know what I mean? So we're gonna play with that a little bit. Mm. Okay. So first thing we're gonna do, I'm just going up like an octave or two and listening to how it sounds. That's kind of cool. I'll kind of come back. So it's pretty dissonant. That's okay because we're making a more percussive sound anyway. So gonna get real wacky. And another tip about this is if you want to um, get a different curve out of this, what you can actually do is you can double up the same parameter. So like do key tracking, but then double it, and it kind of like will change it to a more exponential curve of how it's modulating that, right? And yeah, this video will be up on my YouTube channel, unless something drastically bad happens, um, which I don't think will, but you know we should be all right. And really, this is all just kind of like proof of concept stuff that I think is kind of fun to mess with. So now that I know roughly 70 is cool, I'm going to take that back to 0 and set that to a macro, and it'll be a macro button push primarily. So that's source 6, macro, mod matrix, source 6, negative 70, right? Yep. And then the knob I'll actually let go further to like 88, just because I like having flexibility of like, oh, like I've pushed it to here and now I can make it go to 11, that kind of thing. Um, and yeah, so it just makes it kind of useful to do that sort of thing. So we'll name this real quick. And Sterling, that's a shame. You should spend more time making music, man. Um, life gets in the way, though. I get it. So we'll call this. Just gonna make my own word up here. And again, like I mean, I've had to the people who've just gotten a Hydrasynth, I've had it since oh god, like 2018 or so, before they came out, like the year before it came out or so, and I'm still finding these new tricks like every day. So it's like a never-ending saga of like messing with this thing and discovering new ways of doing things, and really just kind of trying to think outside of the box. Like, just because you don't see comb filtering on there doesn't mean you can't do it. It's all just a matter of how you play with things. And Lord knows I like to play with things. So now when I hit the button on here, I get this totally different response on my keys, which is cool. Now, macro 8, I like to reserve for my effects. Let's just do that real quick. Always fun. We'll increase reverb time. We will bring reverb in, dry wet. We'll give it the ability to go all the way wet if we choose. We will also let it go darker as it comes up. Why not? And what else should we do here? We can bring in post effect, which is going to be something that may or may not work. Let's see what happens here and see how it ends up sounding. I just kind of have an idea in my head as far as what I want to do. So let's name this real quick. I'm going to name it reverb, but it's a good bit more than that. Whatever. It doesn't really matter, does it? So now if I bring this up, we will turn this to a flanger with a really slow rate, high depth, feedback pretty high here. And now I have this kind of like ugly atmosphere that I can play with. Now keep in mind, we also have filter 2. So if we want to really kind of make this whole thing like even more controlled, we also have pre-effects on here so that if we want to use the EQ to kind of tailor things in, we can do that as well. This is just a really rough and dirty way to quickly use that comb filter to make these kind of fun, plucky sounds. And we'll go back up here. Maybe even use, let's give this like a really nice release here. And so this is actually going to go to that harmonic again. So I'm actually modulating it from 2 different places. But as I bring it up, play with that a little bit here. 2. So right about here. Air of detune on that. And brighten this back up. Here. Now you've got that weird kind of watery sound in there. Of course, we'll switch this over here. This is just that filter 2. And again, this is another place where you want to be really careful about your gain staging, because I'm hitting it with a ton of harmonics. So and now that you have all that, you can of course really play with it. So you have your basic parameters in here. You can really kind of get into some some playful areas now if you mess with the raw patch that you've set up, right? So if I just want to drop this down a bit, this is going to shift that whole comb filter setting. So now all my macros would start from a different place. If I start from 64, for instance, and I drop my feedback back just a bit, it's going to make it way more tame. But if I bring it up, let's take that bend down a bit, or we can go way up. So you get all these weird, like, inharmonic and, like, dissonant, funky noises. But yeah, it's just kind of fun to play with. And if you're in the official Hydrasynth Facebook group, I did another video in there where I do a different type of comb filter sound in there. And in that one, I allow it to do some, like, kind of scratchy sounds and... And the different filters will give you really interesting sounds as well. Here's the low pass gate. The vocal is pretty interesting as well. You gotta be really careful with the harmonics on it though. Change the vowel order on this one. Give it some drive. And it's just letting you kind of play with it and do weird stuff, you know? I really like the 8-pole filter for this. We could change the shape, make it a little bit more plucky. There you go. Nice plucky sound. So yeah, there you get these kind of like weird Euro-racky, kind of funky modal synthesis type stuff going on with it, and it's really, again, this is all just kind of like flying by the seat of the pants, goofy, weird stuff that it's really not supposed to do, but you can do it. You know, it's just a matter of playing with it. Here's another one that I did. So this is the one that I did for the Hydrasynth group, and I'll show you this. So yeah, bottom line is you know, just because it says that hey, we don't have XYZ feature doesn't mean you kind of can't come across it with some weird synthesis programming and a bit of wine. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions, join the official Facebook um, Hydrasynth group, and we're always kind of in there talking synthesis and just trying to show some different tips and tricks and whatever else. And yeah, it's it's fun. I will put together a small pack of sounds that kind of use this technique along with some other things. There were some other tips that had came out in the past week that we discussed in the group. So I've been making I'll make like maybe I don't know 10 15 patches or something like that. And I'll put it in the Facebook group for everybody. Um, but just fun stuff. And if you guys have any questions or if there's anything specifically that you want to know more about, or hey, maybe I'm trying to create this sound and I haven't found a way to do it, or it doesn't sound quite right, um, let me know because I love tackling that sort of thing and trying to recreate other people's sounds or it's always good to stretch those sound design muscles. So if there's something that you're interested in, you're like, hey, I'm having trouble with it, let me know, and if I have time, I'll certainly go through it and try to create that sound as best I can. And maybe it can do it, maybe it can't. Who knows? But on the way, you'll probably find something else out that's pretty cool. Um, So on that note, I think I will end it, and maybe I play a couple of the. I got some pretty wild new patches that should be ready to come out soon. Yeah, so the Facebook group is really active, and I have to say I'm really proud of the membership in that group because I've been an admin for a lot of groups. And once you hit about 3,000 members in a Facebook group, they usually tend to turn pretty crap, just to be honest with you. But this one, so far, everybody's been really positive, and it's been very just uplifting group. So I'm really happy about that group. So if you join, just remember, please read the group rules. Make sure you answer the question. Like if you try to join and you don't answer the question, you're not getting in. Like, and yeah, I know not everybody's on Facebook. That's just the way life goes, man. There's reasons to not be on Facebook, and that's totally fine. There's reasons for me not to be on certain forums and whatnot that will drive me nuts. So, yeah. The the saying, anonymity breeds, you know. So anyway, I'll let you guys go. Have a great night, and yeah. Says sorry if you explained this already, but can you explain exactly what a macro is? Yeah, sure. A macro is just a knob that you can tie modulations to, right? So you can have 8 sources all tied to a macro. And that can be, or really, I should say, destinations. So with one knob, you could be turning up, say, in the mod matrix, let's say I have an LFO tied to pitch, right? And it's making that pitch warble. But if you set the macro to, or excuse me, the mod matrix to 0, and then set your macro to an amount, let's say you set the macro to 50, when you turn the macro all the way up, that means that mod matrix slot will now be at 50, right? Even though your macro is all up to 128. But you can do so much more than that. You can also have like, you could be controlling your filter cutoff, your resonance, the filter envelope amount, an LFO amount, and whatever else, all tied to one knob, right? And then you can name it whatever you want. You can pick from a list of names and then edit the name from there, or just write the name from scratch. And you can also modulate your macros, which is important because a lot of the times you might make all these destinations all tied to a macro, which is cool. but then you might want to modulate. Let's say you want to modulate 5 macros from one macro. You can do that. You could have 5 macros being, or all 8 macros being modulated from an envelope. There's all kinds of weird stuff that you can do with that sort of thing. But yeah, basically it's just a performance control. I could have said that a whole lot quicker, huh? So, all right. Uh, have a great night. Peace. Oh, and subscribe or something if you feel like it. I got other videos.